Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everyone.
It is morning. It's I guess it's a good one. How are you? How are you guys?
Wow, you're starting up with an optimistic day today.
Yeah.
It's been a hard week for you.
Oh. Nailed it. Nailed it.
Says a lot. Well, it's another day.
It's more.
I haven't died yet.
Yeah, more along the lines of, is it Thursday? Is it okay? It's Thursday. Yep. It's Thursday.
I get this very often. It feels like I get to Thursday. I'm like, man, it doesn't. I can't tell if it's been a long week or I've just been enjoying or just been a lot of work. It's just very busy all the way up until Thursday. I get to Thursday. I'm like, man, we're almost to a weekend. Yeah. Great. So awesome.
Indeed.
Jumping on in, let's our main topic for today is talking. Let's talk default semantic model. So that is our main topic for today. We're going to talk about what happens when you create a lakehouse. That lakehouse creates the default semantic model. We're going to kind of unpack this as people who've been doing, or MVPs who've been playing around with the semantic model and now Fabric here for a number of months, and kind of our opinion. Where's the advantages of it? Are there some weaknesses to it? What are your considerations when you want to use or build reports off of that default semantic model? Before we jump into our main topic, Tommy, you have a news article for us here.
So we had an official Fabric blog post again. I don't know how many people in our world is going to pertain to, but Microsoft's doing what they do. So the title of the article is Enhancing Open Source, Fabric's Contribution to Flammable, I guess as you say it, and Scalable AutoML. So basically they have some open source libraries around some Apache Spark workloads. I think I don't think it's all the backload that they're doing with Fabric now and Fabric Spark, but they continue to open up a ton of open source and how people can collaborate with it and build off of it.
I mean, this is where I think a lot of this is going to go, right? So now that we have, a scalable AutoML, which is interesting. I think if you talk to like actual data scientists, automatic ML, anything around that space is just they're very leery about it. The FLAML, I guess is how you say, fast and lightweight AutoML, is an open source library to streamline the process of automating learning tasks. AutoML is one of their key capabilities. It's interesting. I'll have to dig in a little bit deeper and see what I need to learn more about this topic. My fundamental kind of challenge with this is, in order to do this, you need a lot of data in your lake from a bunch of sources. We're still struggling to get a lot of that done. We're still trying to figure out how to get everything into the lake first. So I think this is a great opportunity, but I'm not sure if a lot of organizations are going to be ready to jump in with both feet and start doing AI generated things. It will be a wave that comes on top of, now that we have all the data in the lake, we've virtualized it, we've got shortcuts, whatever. I think there's going to be a lot more investigation, or people will need to spend time learning this. But right now, I feel like a lot of companies are still just trying to figure out what is Fabric? How do we use notebooks? How do we get the data to the lake as quickly as we can?
It's almost like cheating when you bring all these groups together, because the data science and ML and all the stuff after the fact, they're looking good. They're looking good right now.
Yeah.
They're already releasing features that you're
not even ready to use yet.
That's right.
I think that's kind of their MO, though. If it's not on GitHub, I'm not downloading it.
Yep, that's right.
It's interesting. I'm looking forward to this one. So this will be interesting to see where they go with this. I think there's been a big push from Microsoft just to start doing ML projects on top of Fabric. I feel like there was a worldwide like hackathon, AI hackathon that was trying to happen as well. So I'm very hopeful for this space because I think the fact that we now have Python, we have Spark, we have things that are a bit more open source, and we can bring those tools to us inside Fabric. I think we're going to see a lot of very good blogs, acceleration. I think we're going to see, in the same way we've seen a lot of like large language models. There's every single day, there's another software app. Hey, use Cursor, use another version of ChatGPT. OpenAI is pushing out another model. I think we're going to see another kind of wave of all these innovative AI-based solutions to solve problems. So it's coming, I think. I think we're going to get to a point where it's going to be a flood of new tools that we're going to get in our hands.
It's funny when you think about, because obviously we're so focused on just the Fabric playground and the AI in there, but Microsoft's doing a ton in obviously the data space, but really in AI too. One of their biggest open source models is called Phi. And they've been working with like audit agents, and all of this is really only open source.
Interesting.
That doesn't touch Fabric at all.
I feel like a lot of this AI stuff starts with, so even with the announcement of Copilot cutting its cost in half, right? So you're using Copilot and you saw a number of compute unit usage items that were getting pushed back to the admin capacity app. Even already, I'm seeing Microsoft, the first wave of AI is just get it working. It's expensive, it's not super cheap. And I think we're starting to see areas of AI that are getting optimized now. It's now becoming less costly to run. It's becoming more user friendly. There's a lot more useful parts coming to it. Even with the Copilot inside DAX Query View, it was interesting at the beginning. It did a couple things, one or two things, but it's getting pretty powerful now, and it's doing a lot better, I think, in DAX Query View. They're definitely tuning these models, and they're becoming more and more useful as I'm using them inside the application. One thing I'll just clearly say, the one that I love right now, so again, this is for Microsoft and for Databricks, and my two applications I love. Databricks has got an AI on it, and you can ask it for help and debugging and other things like that. It's great. And anytime I'm writing Python in a notebook, dude, Copilot excels there. It is so good when you're writing code things. So I'm kind of really excited to see. I haven't played with, I got to be honest here, I haven't played with Copilot or anything around AI in SQL notebooks or using a SQL data warehouse, but I feel like that would be another really good useful thing, because there's a lot of little things in SQL that, like, oh, I don't know how to do this, or I want it to do a roll up. Not many people know how to write a roll up. Yeah. So why can't the SQL just tell you how to do that? Here's the it's a pattern. So SQL is very pattern based. It should be able to help me write that code a little bit better. Anyways, yeah. I'd like to see it do that.
I share the same. I mean, we're talking about Databricks, but that I'm no lie. If we've talked about AI and how code generation would probably be the place to speed things up, it's good. It just seems to get better too. Like the longer you spend in a query, or you're revising things or adding things to it, I'm really surprised actually, like how much code it starts to generate. Like I'll do case statements now where all of a sudden it's just like, oh, you must want to do breh, and it's like the rest of the case statement. And it's like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to do actually. Like enter, right? Like and I think that's where there's a ton of opportunity where AI and copilots and whatever the things are going to show the most benefit right out of the tooling, and it's available in other tool sets as well. But we're heavy Databricks users, and their solution is, I'm enjoying it. Get a lot of use out of it every day.
Okay,
there's also one other thing that it does too.
Go ahead. Yeah,
which is error checking, right? Like when you're it's not just like the prompt to finish the code. It's you have an error, you must want to do this, and it highlights what is wrong, and then gives you the answer. And it's like, escape if you don't want it, enter if you do. And it's just like, yeah, fix it.
Yes.
So very, very useful tool.
Now that you bring this up, and now that you're talking about this, Seth, I got to bring up one more comment. This is kind of random off the cuff. I was reading some articles yesterday. I think we have a new player in town. Okay, I'm gonna go on a thing here.
Is this a hot take?
This is probably a hot take, actually. I saw an announcement, a blog post that came across Databricks and said, introducing Databricks apps. Seth, we've talked about this before. Microsoft has pretty much taken the market from the other visualizations tool. Like it's by far the best visualization tool. It is by far the cheapest to start using it. It integrates with the tabular engine model. It's super fast. All these great things, right? It's doing incredible stuff. I saw Databricks put out this thing called Databricks Apps, and it talks about using AI in your app. It talks about custom data visualization. It talks about self-serve analytics, and it talks about data quality monitoring. This feels like Databricks has taken the approach of, and let me give you give you context here, Databricks is the company that has made the Spark engine. It is what is built most of the infrastructure that we use and move around data today. So they are the initiators, the creators in this. There is some really, I would say, competitive features that are coming into this Databricks app thing that potentially would challenge us, or is I think stepping on some of the toes of where Power BI is going, or where Power BI is on top of the data warehousing and the section of doing the data engineering for Power BI. So I don't know where this is going to go, but I know, Seth, you and I talked a little while ago, said, imagine what if Databricks actually did step into the table and said, look, we're great at the data stuff. We've got the engine. We know what we're doing. The back end side of things are taken care of. Let's start playing in the visual side. Let's give people an incredible experience to build reports and dashboard, and really go all in with serverless Databricks, go all in with building the visual output of the data. And I thought, man, that could be a huge challenge to Microsoft. And as I was thinking about it, one, I was like, whoa, this is a cool feature. The second thing was, whoa, Microsoft better take note of this. And they better not be dragging their feet or dragging their knuckles on any of the visualization side of things, because there's another company coming to play ball at this visualization layer. This could be interesting. Anyways.
I'm going to have to dive more into that, because if we, as we were talking about, I forget what topic, it was recent.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In one of the other previous episodes, like one of the data mesh concepts, right?
Yes.
The distribution and engagement with end users, and Fabric it has that, right? It's always had Power BI, but it's built in the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And Databricks hasn't. Databricks is the big engineering tool. And just briefly ripping through this, like if apps are designed to be the interface for more of your end
consumers,
like it's already a multi-dimensional type of environment where you can have different domain centers and things like that. So that's very interesting.
So I'll have to see where this goes. This will be interesting to see what Databricks produces here. But one thing I don't see Databricks doing, and this doesn't mean it can't happen, but there's this whole concept of like the tabular model, caching the data into memory and using that data to very quickly rip across the report and stuff. I don't see them doing that yet. It may be coming. I don't know. It seems to me like Databricks says, well, we know the best way to access these data in Delta tables, and we can self-optimize a lot of things for you. They handle a lot of the legwork for you. But until they actually get the semantic model, they're going to have a hard time competing against Microsoft in the tabular engine space, because Microsoft has done so much work to keep that front end extremely fast. And again, I think users really have. I think the market has moved from, I used to build Excel files. Now, they still do that, to be clear. We're not saying we're not doing Excel anymore. I think the market has moved from, I want to put visuals on the page, and I expect to click things on visuals and have everything change across the whole page. That is a thing that people, I think, are now used to. And after doing Power BI for 8-9 years, how long it's been out now, it's an expectation. If you don't have a data visualization tool that has multiple visuals where you can click and select and adjust things in a window page and everything adjusts, I think people aren't going to use it because they're just so used to that Power BI experience, or they expect it now.
Oh man, you're derailing me. There goes my day. I got to look more into this.
just making a note that said this was announced. It's probably going to get better, but this to me put a couple notes in my mind. I thought, this is interesting. There could really be some challengers to the market here, and it's good to be a large company and not have any competition with people paying from your visual space is not a good thing. Having no competitors that are playing in your field means no innovation for us. As us consumers, I want a little bit of competition, right? I still want Power BI to be the best thing out there because I love it, and I've basically centered my career around doing it. So I'm still going to push and still learn about it. But there's other tools now that I think are catching on and saying, hey, we could probably do some of this, or carve out some market for us that we already have customers that are doing data things. So I see this as being, we should pay attention to this. We should watch for it. Sorry, that was a very big hot take.
I'm looking forward to seeing where they're going, but kind of right off the same thing where we're talking about all these tools are doing more and more context for you. the major player here, ChatGPT, actually came out with something that kind of almost goes along with our conversation about Copilot and wanting to be more part of what we're doing. So now Copilot's a lot more like, or a ChatGPT is a lot more like VS Code's Copilot, where there's a new mode called Canvas mode for pro users. And it's really neat. And it's also all built within ChatGPT. Basically, you submit as many articles, coding pieces as you can, or that pertain to it.
Sure.
Tell them about the conversation. Rather than writing in that line that it does, it actually opens up a new window and kind of like a thing called artifacts.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that is going to be a lot more in depth. The one thing I hate about all these code tools, as great as they are, I don't know if you've ever been working on something that's a little long and you just say, hey, I am looking for this, this, and this, and bloop, done. You're like, I don't know, man. You give a little more.
Working on something a little bit long. You need to give me a bit more context. Are you building a DAX statement?
The code's long.
Okay.
But the time it takes the AI to fix it is quicker than you would think it would be, because rather than going through everything.
I'm not sure if I use so I'll be honest, I don't use a ton of AI to help me fix code because most of what I write is 100% correct from the beginning. But when I do use code, I just usually use it to generate new code.
There are moments.
That's totally
There are moments if you correct the AI, it'll go, no, you're right. I didn't take into account to this. And then it'll go through like, oh, I don't want to be right.
Well, this speaks to what Kurt's article. We talked about Kurt's article about Copilot and how things work. I mean, that is the challenge. If you're a novice user, you don't know any better. If you're a more advanced user, it really supplements your power pretty well. So like, I think it's definitely going to be a give and take thing here. Yeah, it's interesting. That's a good point, Tommy. I'm actually, I don't have a subscription to ChatGPT, or I guess OpenAI would be what it is. I think you pay for one, right? To have it. One of the things that bug me right now is I would like to try, even though we have notebooks, we have DAX Query View, I'd really like to try different copilots against my code. And there's no way to do it. You kind of only get Copilot. It's built into everything. I wish I had the ability to like, well, let's try Cursor. Let's try ChatGPT. Let's try these other large language models, and I could replace them with what I wanted to use inside different notebooks. So, for example, if I'm paying $20 for my developers to have, GitHub Copilot, I want to use GitHub Copilot in my notebooks inside Fabric. Like that, I want to bring that Copilot with me. I'm already paid for it. I don't necessarily want to use the Microsoft Copilot to do it. Excuse me. Anyways, maybe we should push on to our actual topic today. We're about 18 minutes in. We still haven't done the actual topic. Tommy, you want to give us some tee up the conversation here? Just what are we going to talk about? What should be our main topics here for that default model?
So yes, we are diving into something that's from the onset of Microsoft Fabric has been part of it as a feature, not a bug, where anytime we create a lakehouse, and part of the lakehouse, we get also a SQL Server warehouse, and part of that warehouse, we get what's called the default semantic model. Now, this default semantic model is simply by default, the tables that are part of that lakehouse, where we can define the relationships, create the measures, all in the service. And again, without us doing anything, without us blinking, there's always the creation of a default semantic model for every lakehouse that has a Delta table created. Now, for us, who have been working in Power BI for so long, and the idea of what a semantic model is, and both the user story and organization to individual creation, this can seem initially to fly in the face to a lot of processes. But what we're talking about today is the default semantic model that is created after every lakehouse the primary method that we should adopt and that organizations should adopt? Should we completely ignore it? What are the good use cases for this default semantic model? Why is it there? And what are we going to do about it?
I don't think I want to talk about like what is it, honestly. Like we're going to kind of skim over that really quickly here and then get right into like, okay, what do we as experts who have done semantic models for a number of years, how do we interact with it? So very quick introduction to what is the default semantic model. We know what a semantic model is. It was originally called a data set, which now changed to semantic model, which they'll probably change back to data set in the next couple of months because that's what they do with goals. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it stays put.
Default semantic data set will be
default semantic data set model.
Everything else is semantic model.
Everything else is good. Look, this is basically what this thing does is when you create a lakehouse, you get by default 2 additional artifacts that come along with the lakehouse. The lakehouse has the place where you store files. It's attached to one lake. The lakehouse is a files area and a table area. The table contains delta tables. The default semantic model and a SQL analytics endpoint are immediately created every time you create a lakehouse. You can't turn it off. You can't not create them. They're just part of it. And what I understand is, this is how I read this, the default semantic model immediately takes all the definition of every table in your lakehouse and makes a direct lake connected table inside this default semantic model. And the default semantic model is something that you would use to, I'm just interested in making a simple report on a couple tables that are in the lakehouse, right? Or I need to make like a relationship and make some changes to that default semantic model. I think that's about it for the explanation. If you create another lakehouse, you get another default semantic model, and it points only to that lakehouse. I don't think you can add stuff to that default semantic model that's not in the lakehouse. It's literally a one-to-one. If you want a table in the default semantic model, it has to be in the lakehouse somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think the 2 distinctions I'd make are you there is some selectability of what you want to show up in the model, and most importantly, the capabilities in the UI of the semantic model experience are different between the default and custom, right? Like, and that's where some of the biggest challenges I think come in, and why chat definitely has an opinion in this topic that's already firing off, which I love,
which is great. Yeah, that's why we do
this. Those are the only 2 things I would say as well.
Okay. Let's talk about it. So what are the things that we like? Maybe we start with some of the things that we like about the default semantic model. Maybe we start there, and then we'll kind of talk about maybe some of the edge cases of where it starts falling short of like our. And again, I think this is for me. I'm thinking about how do I build stuff? Like, what do I do when I build things from models? What do I do when I build inside the lakehouse? My pattern for development is bring everything I can, as much as I can, to the lakehouse. Everything I'm doing is bringing data there. If there's, and this is one of the reasons I have a big gripe around data flows Gen 2, is because data flows Gen 2 incremental refresh does not work with my lakehouse. Plain and simple. I'm like, this is annoying to me. If I can't bring the data to my lakehouse, it's almost a non-used tool. And everything Microsoft is communicating as well is everything should go into the lakehouse first, and then you should work from there, because it's the Delta format is now the default format for semantic modeling. It's now how you optimize and make those tables efficient and fast, and that's how you use them in the model. So to me, the lakehouse is so important to what we're doing nowadays. This has been the huge change of what we've seen with Fabric versus non-Fabric things. The lakehouse is the massive game changer for me.
And I think another day too, I actually have it as an episode 2. I know someone was talking even about the common data engineering workflows and how they're predicting they may not be relevant in the days of Fabric, but I pertain for that for another day. But I think the default semantic model, I'll start with what I like, because I almost immediately went to the frustrations.
Yes, let's go through a couple things you like.
So it's direct lake.
It is direct lake.
Really and that is such a plus, and it's amazing how well direct lake can work. So if I already have the creation, if I'm already in a Power BI service, it's like, oh, I got my tables. All right, let's some quick relationships in the service, create a measure or 2. And again, it's basically real time, but not real time. It's not this live connection. Still would love a save button somewhere.
Save button.
Yeah, just my own agita kind of thing. But because
we're doing things we like, not things we don't like yet. We're getting there.
I'm just mentioning that.
Okay.
But the direct lake, and again, this all happens in the service. I don't need another file.
Yep.
I don't have another source or another location, my computer to do this.
Mhm.
It's all created there. And once you start creating reports off of this, the speed of this, there is no refresh time. There is no, oh, what did you load load the data from the report? It's immediately reflected whatever is in your lake house.
And there are settings that go along with this one, right? So when you up, so that's a very interesting pattern that we're seeing here, which is new. But you can turn that off. You can do some other things. There's actually a whole nother. I went to a talk with Phil Seamark and Patrick LeBlanc around lake houses when I was at the Fabric conference in Europe, and I was like, oh, it's direct lake refreshing should be easy. No. There's a whole bunch of other technology they're doing. So yeah, they're bringing a whole bunch of tech in there. This thing called reframing and refreshing and all these other things. So it's interesting that you can. There's a lot of other technology under the hood here. You can make it automatic, or you can slowly change it when you want to. So there's a lot more flexibility now with using the direct lake connection to tables, which is super cool. I really like the flexibility we get there. What else, Tommy? What else do you think you like about it?
So I do like the ability to, I can actually connect to that model in other services like Azure Data Studio.
Yep.
Like the ability to start creating reports in Power BI desktop real time is the lightning speed of that. It's really great. But honestly, though, when like I said, I want to go immediately to, I don't want to say the worst negatives in the world, but I think it's important, unless you have more things you want to add to the like side of things.
Well, let's give Seth a run at this and say, Seth, is there anything that you are, as we look at the semantic model, the default one, are there things that stick out to you? Are features that we didn't mention already that would be above and beyond items you would point out that we should take note of?
I mean, I don't think they're far off from the intent of or the purpose for creating it, right? If it's if I'm building objects in a lake house and I'm shaping them and creating my facts and dimensions as they would appear, right? Like from getting to raw data or the structures of that ETL and framework to shaping something that gets pulled into a model, like it makes sense, like that. Oh man, like I don't even have to go through the steps of, provided I'm carving just a part of like the tables. I certainly don't need everything, and I don't want everything to be pulled into the model. So
sure,
if I can hide it or not, it can't be part of that, which I can, like that cuts out that whole other layer of like management, especially with the sync. And like as I'm making changes, as you know, like as you're adjusting and adding business logic and adding the other column and like all of those things, just like filtering forward and being available in the model. Like, so from the data engineering perspective, I think it does what it's intended to do. I think the challenges come after that, where like you're hamstringing some of the capabilities of the modeling experience.
Sure.
And that's just not acceptable for like the semantic model builders and report builders, right? Like that's where the conflicts are going to come in, and I think rightfully so.
I agree with you on this one. I think so. I think I understand why they put it there. I think what I feel like is happening is they're showcasing the ability of, look, we can automatically create semantic models without having you to import everything. I think that's really the showcase here. To me, the showcase feels like that is the reason why they're doing this automatic. Here's a pre-built model. Here's all the tables that you think you need, which is awesome. It definitely helps. I would also argue, if I'm using Direct Lake and I just need to go check out some data inside a column, it's actually more efficient. I can build a couple of relationships. Now, I'm going to start moving into where Tommy was saying, like, there's some gripes about this, right? It doesn't default. The default semantic model does not create relationships for you automatically. So you make a bunch of tables, it's not going to either one auto detect them, but it actually requires you to go back into the tables and this is where I think it gets a little bit weird. If I'm in the Direct Lake and I'm trying to edit this default semantic model, you don't actually edit the default semantic model. You don't go there to edit it. You actually go to the SQL Analytics endpoint and then you edit the default semantic model, which I think is a bit weird in my opinion. Yeah. If I have the list of tables and I have the list of the model and I'm going to create measures or do things inside that model, I'm expecting to do it by just saying edit the default semantic model. And I would me personally, I think the UI makes the most sense to just say, I'm going to do it in the modeling side. The model is where I would do this. Granted, there's no report pages. Fine, don't care. But if I create another semantic model, something that's different, the whole UI is slightly different. Like the UI is different. There's other buttons. There's other things I can do. I think to your point, Seth, right? If I'm getting that rich editing experience somewhere else, I would really want the default semantic model to have all those properties. Now, let me ideate a little here on top of this, right? The default semantic model is great. I've got tables. I can build relationships. I'm going to ask the question here. I can't build measures, or I can build measures.
You can't build calculated columns or anything.
Calculated columns, because that's the direct limitation there. But you can start slipping in measures and things in there as well. I feel like I'm not finding them actually have the application open. I'm not seeing any place where I'm adding measures here. Maybe I'm missing something.
No, you can, but it's not. If you're still in the warehouse view, you
yes.
can't.
So you have relationships. So how you have to you can create relationships in the warehouse. So this is where I'm like a little bit mysterious, right? So I'm going to step back up, not talking about the tool technology for a second. Let's just step up a moment. We have this idea or concept where we work with companies, and it's this idea of the master and the mini model, right? We have this idea of these are our main data tables, dimensions for dates, dimensions for people, dimensions for master product, right? We're going to make those tables and we're going to put them in the lakehouse. We're going to have a number of fact tables that may or may not join with all those dimension tables. We may have multiple fact tables. And so we could think of like a, many fact table star schema that we're starting to build in the lakehouse. I really think this is a opportunity for Microsoft to say, look, the default semantic model is where you define the master of everything. This is where we bring all the calculations, all the DAX, all the things into that singular model. And then you should be able to make, let's call it, for lack of a better term, a child semantic model, right? From the main one, I make a copy basically. And I think you can do that today, right? You can take the modeling that's been done in that main master model, and you can say, create a new semantic model. If you do that, I would love it to bring all the measures, all the relationships, everything that I've been working hard in the default. It would be nice if it would take a copy of it and then basically build me another semantic model that has all the main features. And let's think about this. I would love it if I need to go add a measure. If I'm going to go add a table, I would go back to the default semantic model, and then I would say, okay, I've made new things in that default semantic model. What of the items should I be pushing, either relationships or measures? And it should be, that is the source of truth, the data dictionary of what I build my data to be looking like. And then from there, I build a handful of mini models, master and mini model. This is one that Michael Kowalski does a lot of, where he talks about like the master mini model perspective, right? I'm going to give a subset of tables and things there. Michael, in the chat, you bring up a great point here. Like a perspective, yeah, it kind of feels like a perspective. It's the same model, but it's not the main model. It's like a version of it somewhere else. So I think I would like to see that, and maybe this is where Carly has done a YouTube video with us around the metrics hub. A metrics hub's amazing, and I think this is maybe where the metrics hub fits, where the metrics hub gives you the large default semantic model, and you start carving out pieces of it for other people in the organization to use. So that's my big picture comment. I'll just pause there. I said a lot. Reactions, Tommy and Seth?
So you make a really good point when it comes to the metric side of things, because I think that this is a relatively new documentation. When Microsoft did announce it made some major updates to the One Lake documentation, but they're saying the default semantic model is going to provide that ability to create standardized metrics that can be used for repeatable analysis. So because we don't have that yet, we're not seeing that major feature or that impactful feature actually the weight of that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it feels like it's just simply a dumbed down version of model creation. But yes, because again, it's not meant to be the normal soup to nuts model creation, especially if we're going to be dealing with this idea of metrics that overlap across models. Mm-hmm. So a lot, I think, of the features that really make the semantic model stand out are, I don't think, as available yet. But that is interesting you say that.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a bigger leap going your direction than mine, which would be is if the default's going to end up to be the master, like there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen.
Well, there's a lot of missing things I need to build in there. You're right. Yes, I agree with you.
Including the total wrong direction where the default should not be throw everything in the semantic model, because that's the most horrible practice in the world.
Yes.
Right.
I mean,
because it is specific, limited in scope, and you need to like, in this case, relationships matter, right? Like, how you set that up structurally is extremely important. And I think there's even some chat going on where people feel strongly about wanting to build that themselves, because there are key components that, if not created right, go awry really quickly. Where I do see value in this, I guess, is almost from like the dev perspective, right? I would still think that being able to select the objects I want to pull in, right? Like just that should be a default experience, as opposed to you assuming I want everything.
I would agree with that statement.
But at the same time, like if this is auto created, like now I have an extensible way of like testing the entire pipeline, right? Like I've created these dimensions, they're in my model, I'm building these relationships. I want to just validate the data in the report area, right? And to me, like, okay, I can see the value in like skipping some of this, or as I'm making those changes, auto apply them, and all of a sudden I get to my final place faster from I've got some basics in my model and I validated all my numbers. Like, to me, that would be a useful. Where I fall apart is like, and I know technologically speaking, right? Like there are limitations to this default. If it's the test bed, let me take what I've tested or configured and save it as a custom, because now I want to extend on it. Now I want it to be something that I can have the full capabilities of what the UI gives me, at least in that case, because I don't think it has everything that the desktop has, or some of the things that you can do in ALM Toolkit related to like semantic models, which I think is pointed out by James in the chat. So like if it's gonna become the model that we use, and we're far away from those features, like let me save it into that realm where I can utilize all those features.
Yes.
And then it becomes extremely useful from my perspective, because it's streamlining some of that back and forth testing, the iteration, the things you have to create anyway. And if the default is nothing other than the stepping stone for me to get to my, final model faster, cool. Right. But if I have to go rebuild everything after the fact, then it's not like
not as cool.
It's less useful. It's less useful.
I agree. I totally agree.
And this is like the hardest part for most people, in terms of if we're actually going to have a governance story around this, or really that true adoption. And again, there may be some technical reasons why that it's not available now, but yeah, like all the advanced tooling, Tableau Editor can connect to a semantic model, in fact, that was created off of a data or lakehouse, but it can't connect or save the default semantic model. That all has to happen in the surface. Yeah, there's no way to recreate what you did on that default semantic model. And again, that leads to a lot of extra work. Seth, the idea that if we could do that quick testing and have almost create like this baseline that everything else would be created off as, I love that idea, because just not available.
Yeah, but
I think that's my challenge, though. A lot of this is like I get a lot of what I think I need, but I think I need like there's no way, and there's also no way to do a diff. Like let's say I add some things, a relationship, a new table into the default semantic model, and I carve off another model that I'm going to your point, Seth, enhance, enrich, do the thing. How do I know what has changed? Like it's just another copy of an artifact. So there's no lineage there. There's no really, there's no value of like, so to me, it just kind of cuts off the value for me. Like why would I want to spend a lot of time building a default semantic model? I'll just build a custom one, and then I get all the features I need. I get everything I want, and I don't worry about it.
Yeah, and sometimes I wonder, sitting on the dark side, which is we're not part of the plan. We don't know like what the total vision of default semantic models is, but
Yeah.
it's the communication part. And like, so either I'm stuck with um whoever developed this doesn't know their audience and didn't engage with a semantic model builder,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's just a miss, or it's they did, and there's a
Like
core
just
set. What is the bare minimum core set of functionality we can put out the door, and then we're going to put it out the door, and then we're going to build towards what we want it to be.
I
And
think
it's
that's
probably that.
it's probably
But
that one.
at the same time, it's just kind of like it'd be nice to know what the roadmap items are, and maybe they're out there somewhere, and we just have to go digging. But um,
I'm gonna
yeah,
blame
I mean, there's
us.
some
I'm gonna say
sure,
Microsoft had a
sure.
beautiful vision for this, and it's just
There,
us
exactly,
not finding where the roadmap is. It's probably us.
exactly right.
But I agree, Seth. I think your observation is incredibly accurate there. I think it was I feel a lot of the features that we're getting right now in Fabric is we need to continue pushing some features out the door. I think we're in this place where a lot of things are new. We're kind of in this death by 1,000 cuts. Most things work very smoothly, but there's a lot of like UI experience things that are still a little bit rough around the edges. And so I think this is a lot of Microsoft. They did this with Power BI. They pushed out a ton of features and kind of saw what was the usage on those features. And then the features that have a lot of usage gets the funding to build the next feature for that item. So I think this is another one of these cases where a lot of features are going to get built in Fabric, and you're going to see some of them get to a point of it's mature enough to get it working and people can use it. May not be super smooth, but they're gonna step back and they're going to say, what is the usage on all these features? And if it gains a lot of usage, then they'll invest more time to build more features. That's software development 101. That's app dev 101.
Except for I would agree with you because let's all pour one for data marts, where that obviously was maybe the precursor to this. But if I'm not mistaken, especially the direct lake mode, if I connect to a lake house or the warehouse from Power BI desktop, that's not direct lake.
Say it again.
So if I'm in Power BI desktop or
Yep.
another tool,
Yep.
and I connect it to the warehouse of just the tables, not to the default semantic model, that is not direct lake mode.
No, but you can go from desktop and go to the lake house and suck in tables that are direct lake. Correct. The SQL Analytics endpoint is just a SQL endpoint. It's like a SQL server.
Yeah. So, and I think the direct lake mode for the reporting, I believe, only works with the default semantic model. Because if I have to take the tables, okay,
you can go get direct lake tables in desktop now.
Many transformations.
But you can build other stuff now. You don't have to build from that one moving forward, or you can go to the default semantic model and say create a new semantic model off of this. You pick the tables you want, and then you get another semantic model that has direct lake. So you can do it in the service. Also, you can do it in desktop. And this, again, to your point, Seth, earlier, right? They landed this. The reason I think default semantic model showed up was because there was no other way to get direct lake tables working other than the default semantic model or starting to build it inside the service. So you had to start there. So I think there was an idea of like you needed it there just to start using direct lake. Now that we have other ways of creating direct lake enabled tables, I think the default semantic model is less impactful. It's less powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good for some self-discovery.
Maybe it was the stopgap to showcase
where they're going to go with
lake,
it. Yeah.
Direct lake while it was the capabilities were built into other tools or built into the other custom ways we can build semantic models.
Let me step back a second. What I'm asking a question here is, what if we had the ability, what if all the editing that we get for normal, like when you create a custom semantic model, would you change your mind about the default semantic model if that experience of go to the model, edit the model, and get all the details of the model, if you had a different experience around that, and that was if you had that editing experience just the same way that we have the default semantic model today, and replace that experience, would it change would you use it more?
Potentially, but probably not.
No.
Because,
okay.
Mike, you talked about the purpose of the lake house is I'm pulling in all my data. Well, I may not need from a single lake house that's all the data I'm going to need, because I may be pulling from other places, or a particular semantic model may require some additional transformations to be done for that model.
Doesn't matter. I mean, transformations is you can't transform anything anyway. Like if I was going to do any transformations, I'd have to go run a notebook, pick up the data, put it back in anyway. So it doesn't, to me, transformation, by the time I'm hitting default semantic models, there's no transformations. You're done. The data is shaped the way you need it to be shaped.
I know, but I'm saying a lot of times when I'm creating another model, or we're creating models off of standard tables, like in the whole world that we've had before Fabric, right?
Okay. But that was all Power Query. If I'm doing that kind of transformation stuff, I'm doing that after, like I have a table and then I produce my transformations. We're saying all of that is done before I get to the table. So you're doing that in bronze, and then I'm going to silver or gold, and I have the final tables the way I want them. So there should be no transformations needed on those tables. If I do need it, I'm going back upstream to build it in the engineering side of things.
Yeah, maybe a little off topic, but I'm talking about every model that we have may have some unique things for that model, not for the business data, where yes, we know we have done the transformations, we have combed it, cleaned it, done everything we need.
Interesting you say that. I mean, I would assume every model is unique because you wouldn't need another model. Why would I want to have the same model multiple times? Right. There's no reason to do that. Like every model should have some unique flavor to it. Exactly. And if you're building the same model many times, you need to step back and say, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. Maybe you should just think about one bigger, larger model that contains all the things you need, or maybe your design of these edge cases are not really valid. So maybe there's use cases there that are doing that, but I would assume the reason you're building other semantic models is because you need some different table structure or different data that does not included for a different audience. I'm thinking a lot less about like tables and building tables and things for a particular report now. I'm thinking a lot bigger now now that I have the Fabric space. I'm thinking more like what does that team need? What does that enterprise solution need? How do we make it easy for them to consume the model?
I think that's my point though. Those reports or those custom views of the gold data is not going to go away, where someone's like, hey, we want a first customer analysis journey view kind of thing, where that's not really something that would live in a lake house. The group by first customer and only
you would. All I would live in the lake house. 100%. You're not going to, like, there's no reason why you wouldn't do, like, if you're doing grouping by weird things there, the fact that we can do the engineering of the data so this is where I think we're going to differ a little bit is the semantic model, because we have all the horsepower of notebooks and data flows Gen 2 and now pipelines, we now have the ability to shape the data way further, like right now, right in front of the model. So our models should get simpler. If the data structure of the tables in the model aren't efficient for the semantic model to run efficiently, I'm going right back to the data engineering side of Fabric and just building what I want and making and shaping it. So to me, the data engineering portion of this is getting much more important. And I'm pushing back a lot harder on people who are building complex models and tables and interconnected things to get the visuals to work. I'm like, well, no, step back. If we need to build aggregation tables, we have all the raw data right there.
Yep.
Ag the table. Just do it in the back end. It's faster. It's going to be more efficient. And then it's always prepared. And you're not having the calculation engine running over and over and over again, doing these like really complex calculations. Build it into the model. Like, so to me, I'm more apt to making more tables that are delivering what I need as opposed to more complex DAX. I don't know where this has anything to do with the default semantic model, but
in general, I agree with Mike. Like, I think the whole premise of Fabric is bringing your data to the same place and having structures that follow the same patterns if at all possible. And I think a lot of those are being developed and reshaping how we generate the models and the reports than we were before. Or at least it gives us the path from folks that are, pulling from all these disparate sources and saying, okay, let's just simplify this whole thing. This is now how it works in our ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to put these random files here. We're going to, create these objects and all of it gets sucked in the same way. This is much more performant. It's much better, blah, 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 blah. And we can extend further. To answer your question though, Mike, I think if it wasn't a different experience and you were just giving me an accelerator, then that solves my use case, right? Like, because what I'm saying is I see it as an accelerator to get to where I want it to go. If it's the same interface and the same capabilities and the same everything, and all you're doing is just streamlining some of the initial build.
Yes.
Yeah, love it.
Yep. And let me go back. So let me give you the one. I know we're running out of time here, but so I'm going to end with my final thought here on this one because I think people got meetings and we got to do like real work. We can't just talk about Power BI and data engineering all day long. So we'll move people along here. But my major gripe with this one is right. Default semantic models are helpful. They definitely utilize a lot of really good, easy to use. It just shows up. You make a lake house, boom, stuff is there. Great. Good for initial exploration things. But outside of exploration, I'm not really a big fan because if you even go from, so a lot of things that I'm doing now is, look, teams are getting bigger. We need a minimum of 2 environments, a dev and a prod, minimum, because there are developers building things or changes to models, and I can't release what the developers are building to a team of people, department, team, enterprise, CTOs, whatever that is. I can't break their reports. So I need some physical separation between what I'm developing and what I'm actually making. So deployment pipelines are awesome. I love them. When you have a default semantic model, because the lakehouse is the only item that defines the artifacts, when I go from dev to test, none of the metadata, the relationships, any measures I build, anything that's inside that model, I only get the tables that have been loaded into the lakehouse. So going from dev to test, the lakehouse comes over. The name of the lakehouse is the same. You can deploy that through the environment, but that's it. Nothing else comes with it. And so the fact that it's basically regenerating a brand new default semantic model, and the deployment pipeline process really is move the infrastructure to the next environment, move the code, pipelines, notebooks, move the code to generate the data, and then you have to run or execute a load of data to actually hydrate the lakehouse with information in it. And only at that point do you get the default tables that come out of the lakehouse. So to me, because I can't move any other designed artifacts with the default semantic model to the next layer, and again, I agree, this is a hard challenge. How do you solve this? How can you move a semantic model to the next layer if there are no tables there? Where do the relationships attach to? There's nothing. It doesn't make sense. So to me, there's other things here that are going on. Like, you're never going to get the default semantic model because it's trying to auto build off of whatever's in the lakehouse. It's just not going to be the tool that I want. Really, what I think, and there's another article here from Reza that was talking about this as well. He makes the argument also, use the custom semantic model because you can change it, you can save it to the workspace, you can put it in Git, and then you can move it to the next environment. And when those tables show up, then the default semantic model, or then your custom semantic model, will have all the details you need. That's what I want. I mean, that's really that. I don't. At this point, I think we're walking farther and farther away from needing the default semantic model. It's just not something. It's just there for exploration. I don't think you're going to need any moving forward. I think you're going to just focus only on building custom moving forward. At least that's where I would put my eggs in that basket. Very long final thought. Tommy, any final thoughts for you?
No, I think the biggest thing is, as we continue to move forward with a lot of the new features coming in Fabric, there's definitely the way we're viewing semantic models, or how we view semantic models is changing. The elevation of things in the service, and really, I think this is going to go in perfectly in line with the metrics hub and the importance of that more than the model itself. So we'll see when that comes.
Anything, Seth, for you? Any kind of wrap up thoughts here?
When's the last time you used something? When is the last time you used a default anything in technology?
That's a really good question.
I think I see the vision. I think it is going to go in one of either your direction or mine. I hopefully it's a useful tool to some degree.
Yeah.
I think there are too many drawbacks of where the limitations on the front end are going to prohibit people from even engaging in it early because it doesn't serve the ultimate need. So pathways to either it being the full solution, right, or it being more of a testing bed to build a custom semantic model remains to be seen. So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves over time. But for the time being, I would recommend sticking with the custom.
It feels like at some level, I mean, I know that the default semantic model is probably woven into a lot of the Microsoft parts of things. It feels like, and I don't know if I would do this for the SQL Analytics endpoint. It feels like I want to switch. Create Lakehouse with default semantic model or not with default semantic model. I think it's I know it's there. I know it just kind of works. I don't think it costs me anything extra in compute usage if it's there. But I actually think, if I'm trying to make my workspaces really clean and not make a lot of extra clutter, this would be one of the things I would actually want the option to turn off. I do like the Lakehouse. I do like the SQL Analytics endpoint. Those two, I think, pair very well together. I don't think I need the default semantic model.
I get it, but what is the semantic model in its base form? It's just alleviating the connections, alleviating the connections to the Lakehouse tables, right? And
totally get it.
In that connection mode, and it's that hive, right? That just goes, okay, this is the thing that's going to ease a workload along the way, because then you don't have to do that. And I think the feedback is, well, we're going to do it anyway because there's not enough integration in the point that we need it.
My comment to that would be as a what if. What if we just said, screw it, we don't need default semantic models and we don't need Lakehouse?
Nobody wants your semantic model.
Just give me the Lakehouse. I think there's maybe an option here that says just give me the Lakehouse. I'm trying to keep my environment clean. I don't need those two other items. They're not required.
Yeah. No, I agree. The default stuff drives me nuts. Like, if I can't remove it, I don't want it.
Yes,
obviously, right?
That's true. Yeah, to me, the linchpin for me is the Lakehouse. The Lakehouse is incredibly important.
Yeah.
The things that are coming default, not so happy about it. And honestly, if I'm going to build stuff, I'm going to build my own, SQL Analytics endpoint. I'm going to build my own SQL warehouse in there. I'm going to build my own default semantic models. That's what I'll do. But I'm not a beginner developer anymore, right? I'm a pro user, right? We are the experts in this space. So we were saying, like, of course, we're not the experts. Don't use the default stuff. New users probably will love it. All right. With that being said, thank you all very much for your time. This was a great episode. We appreciate your ears and you listening to us for a whole hour as we yammer on about something that probably the only 5%, maybe even less, 1% of the world even cares about. So we hope your run or bike ride or something that you were doing today was productive. Good job for getting to the end of it, or quitting early and staying on the curb and crying because you weren't able to finish your workout. With that being said, please share this podcast with somebody else. We appreciate your ears. We appreciate you jumping in and listening to us. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. If you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of powerbi.tips social media channels.
Almost didn't make it there. Thank you all very much. See you next time.